this show going, man.
Hurry up, hurry up! Hurry up! Hurry up!
Hurry up!
Come on now. We're gonna have action soon. Right here. It ain't going nowhere.
Boy, your ass got some technique, boy. You ain't show me that this summer.
Hey, wild cat.
Ball at the 5, third down and 2.
That was bad.
Let's go have some fun, bro. We ain't got to talk about too much.
He wasn't playing the ball.
It's holding.
Cliff. The cliff.
How is that not called?
That ain't gonna call a damn thing.
What is the delay for? He's standing right there.
He's taking a card out. He's a piece of paper.
It's that close? Dear Lord.
Hello and welcome. We're the Aussie Guys. I'm AJ. Here with me is G. How are you, G?
Good.
Good.
Is that quick enough?
Yeah, that's very quick. I just said, let's do a quick intro. We've been chatting to Matt Waldman. Excited to get him on again, once again. Matt Waldman, obviously, of the RSP. And Matt, I was going to ask, one of the things I was going to ask you right off the bat was, what's the ETA on the post-draft RSP? And I noticed that I think it's dropped in the last hour.
That's correct. It dropped a couple of days ago. And,
okay.
So I'm happy I'm done, and I'm getting a chance to talk with you guys.
So what's on the agenda now for Matt Waldman? What do you do now? Do you go to the Bahamas? What do you do?
Football guys rankings is certainly one of the things I got to do. So some football guys work will certainly be that case, and more tape study for 2020, getting ready for a newsletter for the RSP for subscribers that comes out June through December. And then also waiting for my daughter to graduate Marines boot camp at the end of the month, and then get married. So actually, I've got a pretty busy month ahead.
Wow, she's getting married. How do you feel about that, Matt?
I feel pretty good about it, actually.
Okay. Is he a nice guy?
And considering that the guy's he's a nice guy. He's a former Marine, pretty laid back. Yep. We've known him for a couple of years now. He seems to be an all right guy. He's built like a refrigerator, so I'm not worried about her. I might be worried about him with her, but I'm not. But I'm not worried. I'm not worried about him otherwise. So no, it's going to be great. He's a good guy.
Lovely.
Yeah. I know. Like my daughter's now 19, and she's picked up her first boyfriend in the last, since we spoke last time. But I just kept an eye on him, let him know. Just dropped hints every now and then, just to do the right thing. But he's a good kid.
Oh yeah. Listen, when my daughter was younger, and she was first getting phone calls from boys, I used to joke that they'd have to come meet me, and I would be in the kitchen with a cleaver, and I'd be chopping stuff up, and I'd hold the cleaver up, and I said that I told her, I said, when he's gonna have to come here, and when he comes here, I'm gonna come out here, and I picked up one of our cats who would basically be allowed to be tied up like a pretzel, and I said, I'm just gonna come in holding this cleaver, and I'm going to put ketchup all over the cat, and I'm just going to have him hang limply on my arm as I walk into the room and introduce myself. And it'll just hang here like that. So she'd laugh at me and just go tell me to shut up. And then every time a phone call would ring, her bedroom was near the kitchen. So if her door was open and she got a call and I was cooking, I'd put the knife, whatever I was doing, down, pull out the cleaver from the drawer, and pick up the cat and let him hang in my arm and just look at her, and she'd just look at me and just start laughing, and whoever it was on the other line was, why are you laughing? She's like, nothing.
Yeah. But that's pretty much what your daughters give you, isn't it? Like, that's what my daughter does, look at you and just go, yeah, whatever, Dad. Yeah. That's okay. That's okay.
Exactly. You're gonna have fun over the next few years. I can tell you stories, but
no, please don't, Matt. Please don't. Let me find out for myself.
American Horror Story, Australian Horror Story.
Yeah, exactly.
Those horror stories are going to be universal, I'm sure.
Oh, they would be. Without doubt.
Worldwide.
So look, the process we got for you today, Matt, what we thought, because we're the draft has been done, because we listened to you guys on the Audible and all that, and they have the deep dive and the scuba. We have a similar thing, but we did ours. Instead of calling it deep dive, because we don't want to rip you off completely, is because if you change a little bit, there's you're okay.
Yeah,
as far as
get around copyright
and all that. Is we have one. We have the if you went to a nightclub, Matt. So you have, when you walk in, you got the target rich environment. They're all there. Everybody's there. Everybody's available. It's the start of the night. as the night goes on, which is our second level, it was sort of the Dutch courage. You need a few drinks to go out there and start grabbing, no, I shouldn't say grabbing, but you know what I mean, grabbing play, but you know where I'm going.
That's not PC. No.
Yeah, it's not. And then at the end of the night, just before, last drinks, the beer goggles are on. I've got to get whatever I can before these lights come on because no one looks as good when the lights come on. So that's sort of how we looked at our three levels. So what we'll get you to do today, Matt, if you could, is Matt Waldman's sitting down, he's about to, because we all play fantasy. So if we go through each position, we'll do like one person. For quarterbacks, we'll just do 1, 1, and 1 in that. So someone you grab at the start in the first few rounds, someone you grab in the middle that might be there, and then a guy you'd grab in the last round or so of your draft. And then we'll do 2 for wide receivers, running backs, and then 1 for tight ends, just because there's a lot more running backs than wide receivers. So we'll grab 2. If that's okay with you, Matt, if that's a good format.
Sounds fun.
Excellent. Okay, but first question before we start that, just give me one guy out of everybody, all the skill positions, one guy that you just enjoyed watching. Doesn't matter that he might not get drafted, he went to be a free agent in the draft, but the one guy you just had fun just sitting there and watching.
Oh boy, there's so many. So let's limit it down to one.
Just one
guy I
come
really
on.
enjoyed watching was Trevon Wesco. Who was a tight end, H-back, kind of fullback player and one for the New York Jets. And he played at West Virginia. And he was a former quarterback when he arrived at West Virginia, weighed about 200 pounds, went to community college, changed positions, and came back at about 270 pounds. And he's still flexible like an athletic quarterback, which makes him a really nice route runner, an underrated route runner. But on top of it, he's strong, he's physical, and he plays like an offensive lineman when he blocks. I mean, he's versatile. He can play at the line of scrimmage. He can work, as an H-back, as a lead blocker, or work across the formation. But he's also really quick and fluid as a ball carrier. He to me, I think if he took up rugby, he'd be pretty good.
Okay.
So he's he's kind of one of those guys that I think that he's physical and he's athletic, he's coordinated, and I think that he's going to be a type of guy that might end up even overtaking Chris Herndon, the tight end for the Jets. Might even overtake him and wind up being a much better player than people realize. He's a guy that I think's so underrated that because nobody's picking him in drafts.
Yep.
But he's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a top 10, top 12 tight end in fantasy leagues down the line.
Okay, now me and AJ have Chris Herndon in a league that we share. We better trade that guy away before we put this out. My God. One guy that I really like, Matt, and obviously you've looked at him because you look at everybody, and that's Tyree Brady out of Marshall. I've just watched this guy and just gone, I have never seen so many circus catches in all my life from one receiver, just in 1 year, in 2018. Was just incredible. I just really enjoyed, at the line, his feet are that quick, he just dances at the line. But the thing I liked about him is, if you see a lot of guys that sort of do all the dancing at the start, is it's almost as though they do the same amount of steps and then go. He'll do 3 and then go. He'll do 10 and then go. And the corner has no idea when he's going to take off. But just the catches he makes, he reaches over people and one-hand catches and just contorts his body in some unusual ways to catch the football. How did you see him, Matt?
Oh, I loved him. He was one of my favorite players all fall, and for the exact same reasons as you, he's a terrific pass catcher. The disappointing thing with him was that he just wasn't very fast in terms of how he worked out. And then when you look at his tape a little bit closer, you could see at times that maybe he didn't get great separation initially, and it forced him to have to make these types of plays by necessity. And in the college game, that's okay because usually if you're the best player on your offense, they'll throw to you anyhow. But in the NFL, if you're not the best, if you're not getting separation, quarterbacks aren't as likely to throw the ball up for grabs like that unless you're an extra special player who also usually can still be fast enough that it's not a big deal. So I hope he does well in Jacksonville, and I really like his game, but I wanted to rate him higher than I could, and so he was a lot of fun, and he was one of my favorite players. I wrote about him a lot in my newsletter last year, talking about his game. So I'm right there with you.
And just again this year, did you find, before we move on to our the actual get you to talking about these guys you'd pick in the draft at each position, but did you find again that a lot of the quarterback play with a lot of guys you looked at that you liked at wide receivers was average at best?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were some players that you looked at who I think might have even gone higher on draft boards if they had better quarterback play in the college game, and so you didn't get to really absolutely see them at their very best on a consistent basis. But that's often common for the college game. So the more you do this, and I know you guys have been doing this a while and have really been studying the game and are really good at what you see. I bet you're also starting to see that the more you learn about the game and the more you study it, the more you start to realize, wow, these guys aren't playing with particularly strong quarterbacks, and it becomes something more notable than maybe it did, 10 years ago.
I think it's taken me a while. I've been doing this for, I think it's 5 years. I've been looking at the college, and it really dawned on me last year, I think. And so going into this year, I noticed it even more than I did, with it dawning on me last year. So, and Tyree Brady was one of those guys. I think half the circus catches he made, Matt, because the ball was, underthrown or... right. The times he did get separation was, a yard ahead of the corner. The ball was thrown and he had to stop and prop and jump over the guy. But I hope when people look at these guys, they take that into account. So we should get started, shouldn't we, AJ?
Yeah. Let's dive in.
All right. So we'll start with quarterbacks?
Yes.
All right, Matt. So, Matt Waldman, you're on the clock. Yeah, you got to pick it at the top for a quarterback. What's one of the top quarterbacks you're taking?
Well, if it's at the top of the board, and I have to pick a quarterback, then I'm going to go Kyler Murray, and I'm just going to hope for the best with the offensive line in Arizona, which basically means that I'm hoping for Kyler Murray to have about 4 to 6 good weeks next year or this year before the offensive line either gets hurt or before defenses realize what the scheme is really going to be about, and then they shut it down. Or hopefully maybe the line starts off poorly. He runs for his life for a little while and is able to stay healthy enough that when the line comes back that he can have a strong season down the stretch, much like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen last year. I like his skills as a deep ball thrower. I like his skills overall as an accurate passer, and they're going to try and use him in ways where he can make quick decisions and get the ball out within his first or second read. He can read the entire field, but the problem is that if he's not going to have enough time due to this offensive line not really changing all that much, then when he has to move and then find that next read and rhythm, he can't do it because he's kind of like the old Warner Brothers cartoons of the Road Runner, where he kind of works from one spot to the next really fast, kind of just flits from one spot to the next, and he's not in a balanced position to throw the ball to that next read. So while he can get away from the pressure, he's not doing it in the way that, say, Tom Brady was good at or Jared Goff is good at, where he can be in a balanced position while he's moving to get rid of the ball. He has to literally kind of reset his feet and then throw, or else the ball's not accurate. And he doesn't, and because he moves so fast to that next spot, he's usually not balanced, and it forces him to then move again, and then it forces him to move again, and the next thing you know, he's having to make an extremely difficult play rather than than finding an easy solution. So I'll hope for the best with him with this new offense, and that they're trying to draft skill players around him. But I'm a big believer that I don't care how talented your skill positions are. If you don't have guys up front to actually block, your plan isn't going to work. Okay,
before we go to the next one, just one thing. Look, we've all discussed the height and the weight of Kyler Murray. Now, is that a concern, yes or no, Matt? Because there are... When I watched him, when he got hit, mate, it takes him a while to get up. He out of all the quarterbacks I watched, he was probably the slowest to get up after getting hit. And there's a couple of tackles in there where, like a a defensive end or maybe a line. Whoever came through, I can't remember who it was. There's one particular, and they grabbed him by the back of the jersey, and they pretty much with one arm picked him up and slammed him into the ground. And this is at the college level. We all know when you get to the pros, these guys are faster, bigger, and way stronger. They've been in the weight room for a lot longer. They're, as you say, Matt, they're grown-ass men. Is it a concern?
The height isn't a concern, but the weight is.
Yep.
Because the fact that they can do what you just described, it's going to happen more and more often. And while he may be able to get away from a lot of hits, there's going to be some hits that he can't. And because of the fact that he also carries the ball around like it's, basically something that's on fire that he's trying to find a bucket of water for, he tends to when he takes a hit, he ends up losing the ball.
Yep. Right.
So he doesn't have very good ball security. He's small, not short. He's small and short, as opposed to Russell Wilson, who I would say was short but not small. And yeah, he weighed in at a weight that was more desirable at the combine, but he didn't work out during that combine time because basically, and usually that means, from what we've seen when they play this game within the game of trying to game the system of these pre-draft workouts, is basically what's happening here is that he's probably going to come into camp weighing about 200 to 210 pounds. And then he's going to lose about 15 pounds through the course of the season because he's not going to be able to hold that weight. And he's going to be playing at 190, 195. And that's where you get a little bit worried about that. So, yeah, I think it's a concern. I think he's very much a boom-bust player. But I look at the receivers. I look at the plan that they're trying to instill in him. And if I have to pick a quarterback early, then I'm going to go with him and hope for the best.
Excellent. Okay, so we've got to the middle rounds, Matt. Who's the guy that you're looking at in the middle then?
Definitely Will Greer, because I actually have him rated higher than Kyler Murray. And I love the way that he plays the game. I think that he knows how to appropriately be aggressive. He throws the ball with great accuracy downfield. He displays a lot of anticipation. So his receivers don't need to go and try and win the ball in rebound situations. They can catch the ball in stride. He made his receivers look like draftable players, and teams were actually, I joke and I say this, I hope the best for these players, but he actually made those players look like they deserved to be drafted when I don't think they necessarily did. So, Will Greer did an excellent job with that. He's also good in the pocket, and he's a good leader. And while he doesn't have a great arm, I find that a lot of NFL analysts who are former players really prize athletic ability more than technical ability sometimes. They just seem to be in awe of each other's athletic ability at times, and that can be an area where they tend to err on the side of athletic ability. And I think Greer is athletic enough to be in every, a starter and to be a good starter. And with Cam Newton coming off of his second consecutive shoulder surgery to his throwing arm, and also 2 years away from his contract being up, and he's, getting older and he's taken a lot of punishment, I think that this was a good decision by Carolina to draft Greer. And, if Cam Newton has 2 great years, that's excellent, but they may decide we don't want to spend the money to give him an extra few years on the contract. We can go with Greer and see how that works out. And on paper, Greer, I think, is a little bit better than Cam Newton in terms of throwing anticipatory passes. And that matches up well with what Cam Newton's receivers are like right now. Where Cam Newton's better, obviously, is how big and strong he is, that he can stand in the pocket, take hits, run if he needs to, and also be able to throw the ball where he can buy time and shake off opponents and then throw the ball when he sees someone come open rather than anticipate it. And that's a nice skill to have. But Greer, I think, is a little better on the anticipation level. So maybe the offense will run a little bit more efficiently if he plays up to the starter level that his promise portends.
The one thing I liked about Will Greer, out of all the quarterbacks, I found that he was the best quarterback at putting the ball where he wants his receiver to be. Like we all talk about, like the completion rate. Well, that's great. Well, if your receiver has to slow down to catch the ball, it looks great on in stats because it's a completed pass, and you start looking at stats going, mate. But if you look at the film, he had to slow down, or the ball was to his back shoulder, and the receiver made a good catch. But Will Greer put the ball constantly in front of the receiver. Never had to break stride, and that's one thing that really stood out, Matt, when I was watching him.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you about that. I think it's a fantastic point in terms of what Greer has to offer.
When I was watching Will Greer, sometimes they would switch to, like, I think they call it the end zone view, where they're behind the quarterback. You're sort of looking down the field, and when they do that, it gives you not a very wide view sometimes because they're kind of zoomed in, and you'd see Will Greer drop back and he'd throw the ball, and the receiver wouldn't even be in the frame on the left or the right hand side or whatever. So that that was incredible. I really loved seeing that view because
the receiver come into the picture,
right,
and the ball's already there
in stride. Yeah, catch it, off he goes.
Yeah.
All
right, Matt. So you're at the bottom of the draft. You're looking for a guy. You might not even got these two guys that you wanted in the middle and at the start. So it's like, okay, I'm hemorrhaging here at quarterback. Who am I taking? Who's a flyer?
I'm taking a guy who's drafted by the Los Angeles Chargers, Easton Stick, out of North Dakota State, and Easton Stick backed up Carson Wentz. He's a very good athlete, very fast, quick, someone who's strong enough, weighs about 220 pounds, so he's a pretty physical presence who can run the ball, but he's also very skilled in the pocket. He's someone that moves around and doesn't hesitate in terms of making decisions, and he's very comfortable in tight quarters. So, I was having this conversation with the great Bob Harris, who does a lot of fantasy work, that I'm good friends with, and we were talking about actually talking about more of like kind of life experience type of things, and how there are some people in their lives that when something traumatic is about to happen or something crazy is about to happen, that there's a fight or flight instinct that people have. And some people are really good at the fight or flight instinct. Like they know when it's time to run, or they know when it's time to take action. And then some people, they see it unfold and they see the little cue that says to them that they need to do something dramatic. And they just sit there and freeze up and watch it unfold like a movie as it overtakes them. And when you look at Easton Stick, he's very good in the pocket because he doesn't let the pocket overtake him. He makes small movements and is able to find the open man. His biggest issue is maybe reading coverage on a consistent basis. Sometimes he makes some throws where you're looking from that end zone view and seeing him, spot an open area, or you see an open area that's wide open, like literally in front of him, and he throws it to where the defender is. And you're thinking, what was he reading that he didn't throw it to this wide open area, and that occasionally happened with his game. Some people worry about his arm strength, but again, these are people who I think tend to be analysts who are very, how would I best put it? They were strong arm. Their weakness was they'd come into the fourth quarter of a third preseason game, throw 3 interceptions, and then be cut and put on another team. And then their analysis was based on arm strength, which I always found kind of interesting. But Easton Stick is one of those players that I wouldn't be surprised at all if he turns into a really good backup, and maybe even a starter who surprises, because I think it's kind of funny. I actually think he might be closer on par to Carson Wentz than people believe, and wouldn't surprise me at all if he kind of comes into games and starts winning games and managing the game in a strong area, and having Phillip Rivers as a guy in that room that he can work with for at least another year or two could be really helpful to his career.
Nice.
Just made AJ smile that you picked the backup to Phillip Rivers for his Chargers. Okay, so we'll move on to running back, Matt. So we'll give you 2 because there's running backs. There's a fair few on here. Actually, we'll start off with, we'll grab 1 at the start and then we'll grab 2 in the middle and 2 at the end.
Okay, sounds good.
So he doesn't have to be right at the top of your board, Matt. Maybe not picking 101 overall. Somewhere in the first round. So just give us someone at running back.
Sure. Well, I'm in a dynasty league where I had the 4th overall pick,
Yep.
and I selected Darrell Henderson, the running back for the Los Angeles Rams. I selected him 4th overall. I already had enough receivers and decided that I needed some running backs, and I liked having Henderson because when you look at what he can do, he's extremely fast. He's a terrific pass catcher. He runs with good balance, and he's in a system where if Todd Gurley is healthy enough to play and be the guy that Todd Gurley's been for these past 4 years, then he's going to have that. The Rams seem to indicate that they're going to use him in a role that's similar to, say, Alvin Kamara. So he can be used as a receiver and motioned across the formation to run the ball to the outside. He can be used on screen passes. He'll be used in the same backfield with Gurley. And then they'll use him to set up other types of plays, but also use him as an inside runner. And I think because of the fact that this team has such a good scheme and it executes as well as it does and has strong surrounding talent, that Henderson could really have a strong year. And if Gurley can't play, and the condition, the arthritic condition that he's rumored to have, is so bothersome that it really slows down his career and causes him to have to retire early or limit him severely, then Henderson has a lot more upside much sooner. So I'm actually very excited about what he can do because I thought while I had him ranked lower on my overall board, when I just judge running backs based on, one type of running back across, or a general look at what they really are, he was a little lower. But if I look at how he fits with the scheme,
yep.
He's in a very good scheme fit, and it makes him one of the top backs on the board.
No, I agree. I think them picking him up is a bit of an indication of Todd Gurley injury. Like I've spoke about this on a couple of pods we've done recently, Matt, is I had a shoulder operation about 4 months ago, and when they did it, because I had a lot of pain in there, and then when they opened me up and had a look in there, they realised I've got no cartilage left on top ball of my shoulder joint. Just from, let me just tell you, going to gym and doing is not good for you. It's just not good. They say it's good, but it's just bloody not. So, but being a tradesman, I have to use my shoulder all the time, Matt. So it's sort of, constantly on and off anti-inflammatories. And look, all I'm using it for is I'm not putting weight through it. Now, Todd Gurley, if it's true what they say about his knee, mate, you can imagine he's got his whole weight going through there, plus the extra force that is put on there when you cut, run, is far more than what your actual weight is. I've been saying this for a while. If I had Todd Gurley shares, I reckon you've missed a boat on getting rid of him, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because it seemed pretty obvious to me in that epic, score fest of the Rams-Chiefs game. In the first quarter of that game, you saw Gurley get tackled near the boundary, and the way he got tackled, and the way his knee bent back, and the way that he got up, I remember watching that game and thinking, "Oh, that's it. Like, he's hurt. He is not coming back in this game." And then when he did, they just kind of used him as a decoy the entire game. Mm-hmm. And I thought, "Wow, he's going to be out for a while. At maybe this is a significant injury." And then they just used him as decoy the rest of the season. And I had arguments with people on not arguments, but debates about this with people on our football guy staff message board. And they were like, well, he should have been listed hurt, where he's not listed hurt, but he's still playing. And so you're thinking, did you see what happened in that game? Because I remember I asked Dr. Gene Bramall about that too. I said, did you see it? He goes, oh yeah, I saw it. He goes, and I'm with you. He said, there's something there, but we didn't know. The Rams are hiding it, And now that we look at this scenario, I think it's very unlikely that we're going to see the same Todd Gurley again, and that's a shame because he really was he was an all-star talent, and if he had the type of years that he could have put together, as in like what he did up to the game last year and the year before, and then his rookie year, he could have been a Hall of Fame player. He's that good.
Yeah, he's probably happy he got paid last year. So, all right, Matt. So we go to the middle rounds.
Yeah.
Who are you taking in the middle?
I'm going to take, I think probably in the middle rounds at this stage. I think that let me go with him. I'd say I'd probably go with Darwin Thompson, the Kansas City Chiefs running back. It might be a little early for him. It would be between him and Alexander Madison of the Minnesota Vikings, both players I like. But I might reach a little bit up for Darwin Thompson only because there's another back late that I would probably try and pick up. And Darwin Thompson to me is kind of like a Brian Westbrook type of player with a little bit more power. He is a very strong man who could have been an Olympic power lifter. I talked to his high school coach, and he's a guy who breaks a lot of tackles, and not just like arm tackles where someone swats him, literally where someone's able to get their shoulder into his body, and he's able to bounce off of those. He's quick. He's fast enough to be able to earn long gains, and he's someone who catches the ball well. And with Carlos Hyde really being a one-year contract player, and Damian Williams, to me, while he had a really strong season, a lot of that was a product of an offensive line and him being a competent running back. He's a competent running back. He's very fast. He can catch the ball. He can block. He understands how to follow the blocking scheme, but he's not creative. He's a very straight line-ish type of runner. Darwin Thompson's more creative. I think he's also versatile in terms of the types of blocking schemes you can use with him. And I think he's more of the future for that team. And with Andy Reid also drafting Brian Westbrook, I bet he sees that in Darwin Thompson. And, while there's another guy in James Williams later who can also catch the ball in the backfield and might provide some competition early on, I think Thompson's all-around skill set is going to be surprising to people, and I think he's the type of player who has the kind of attitude that combined with his talent, he'll climb his way up that depth chart.
Excellent. All right, I was going to say we'll do two, but we'll just do one at each spot because there'd be guys at the end of this I want to discuss.
Oh,
with
yeah,
Matt.
no worries.
So late rounds, Matt. Who are you taking a flyer on? So you're looking at high ceiling guys here, aren't you? Like just
Yeah, I'm taking Bruce Anderson with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who
nice
also
pick,
another...
Matt. Can I just, before you go on, Matt, can I just say something? This really annoyed me about you. So, I'm sitting there watching this Bruce Anderson guy. I haven't heard anybody talk about Bruce Anderson. I'm going through. I'm sitting down like you do, and I don't see my family for a couple of months.
You put your blinkers on?
I put my blinkers on. I don't look at anybody else. I'm like you. I don't look at any other guys. I don't want to listen. As soon as someone starts talking about the prospects, I turn the pot off because I don't want to know because it may sort of
colour your...
it doesn't send you down one part, but it does. It does colour it a little bit. So I'm sitting down, what's this? This guy, I love this guy. This guy is great. So I look at him and they go, okay, I'm going to go through and have a look at Twitter, see if anybody's talking about him. No one's mentioned him. Then I go onto YouTube. Guess who's bloody doing an hour talk on Bruce Anderson? Matt bloody Waldman. Oh, God, you are kidding me. Oh, there's a cat out of the bag right there. I said, damn it, Matt. I call him bullshit on that. That's what I was doing. Oh, and now everybody's over it, Matt.
Do you know my name? Do you know my name in fantasy leagues used to be "Damn it, Matt"?
Yeah, well, I wasn't using the term "damn it." I can tell you.
Even better. The more colorful, the better.
Oh, okay, Matt. Just tell us about Bruce Anderson.
Was it usually? Did it? I bet it was. It must have been along the lines of blank you, Matt.
Oh, mate, my wife is going, why are you yelling at the computer?
That's awesome.
So it's not the computer. It's this bloody bloke in Georgia I'm yelling at.
Listen, I'm with you. Obviously, he's such a good receiver, and I got to see him at the Senior Bowl up close. And he was only there for a day in terms of practicing on the field before he got hurt. And it was just a minor injury, but for precautionary reasons, he didn't participate for the rest of the week. But they run these drills where they basically are catching short passes out of the backfield, and they're covered one-on-one by linebackers and safeties. And I've been watching these drills for 10 years now, when I go. And I've never really seen a back just dominate the way that he did, play after play, being able to beat guys as easily as he did. And because he was beating them so easily and so quick and had such a nice variety of moves that were efficient to get that separation on these short routes, one of the safeties just decided that he had enough and he didn't want to get embarrassed. So he charged up to the line just as the snap was coming, timed it so that he could just shove the running back to the ground and not have to go through the drill.
Yep.
So it was, and so to me, I thought that's great. That's a sign right there that they were, how good he was. And you see it on the field. He adjusts well to the ball. He covers kick duty, in terms of punt returns and kickoff returns. He's a coverage player, so he's a physical guy. He's someone that will make the team, even as an undrafted free agent. But I think he'll work his way into a spot. Bruce Arians has been known to give guys an opportunity when they're playing well at that position, even if they're late round or not drafted at all. And I think that you look at this depth chart, and Ronald Jones really disappointed last year. And Bruce Arians doesn't have any real ties or investment in him because he's a new coach with this guy. So it's not like he asked the team to draft him. And then Peyton Barber, who I always have liked, again, he's a talented player. I think he's an underrated player. But if Bruce Anderson can show a little bit more speed and get into the secondary a little more often than what Peyton Barber can, he's going to earn a share of time in that backfield. So I think it's a great late round pick to choose him. A lot of people don't know who he is, and I think a lot of people are going to find out over the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, they did as soon as I watched the bloody YouTube. They found out who he was. But that catch that he comes out of the backfield on the wheel route, Matt, I heard you speak about it when I was watching the hour YouTube that you put up there up for the RSP. I can't remember the gentleman you were talking to, but he catches that ball probably better than some of the wide receivers that are in this class. He just at speed. It was just. I thought, mate, how can you? This guy is going to get used everywhere because he can run the ball. He catches it like that, and he looked so natural to him. But the only problem I had with him, Matt, was when he runs into the pile, he drops his head and like looks down at the ground. And I'd like to see him a little bit more upright. You don't want him standing up. You don't want it Latavius Murray style. But once you drop your head, Matt, the next thing is you're going straight down to the ground. It's just your body follows where your eyes look.
Yep. Great point. And I hate that about runners myself, but Tevin Coleman gets away with it all the time and seems to be an okay player. And there are some players where they seem to be all right in that range. So it's not a great part of his of his game, and it would be nice if he can get better at it. And I think he can.
Yep.
But even if he doesn't, his ability to set up creases and be able to get through them are good. He has really strong ball security. And like you said, he's effortless as a receiver. So I think at the very worst, considering the investment that you'll make in him, which is a late round pick, you're going to probably get contributor upside, which is going to be a nice, kind of nice return on investment as a fantasy player.
Yeah, and his landing spot is it's just
good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It really is perfect. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, wide receivers, Matt, same problem. Picking the first round, maybe not picking at the start. You're picking maybe in the middle, maybe to the end now, Matt. Who are you taking wide receiver?
I'm going with Hakeem Butler because, for obvious reasons, I like him a lot. He's a very physically dominant player at the catch point. I think he gets off the line of scrimmage fine. I think he's got to get better at it, but there are a lot of analysts who kind of nitpicked his ability to get off the line of scrimmage this year, and I found that kind of humorous because most wide receivers in the college game have trouble getting off the line of scrimmage against pro players. Mm-hmm. And the difference is that most of them aren't big, strong, and fast like Hakeem Butler. And Hakeem Butler is going to continue to learn and get better. And what he did do, that when he did get off the line of scrimmage well, he showed a variety of moves that were well performed and well timed, and I like that. And I think he runs good routes. The biggest issue that really people had was that he drops the ball. But as I've talked about a lot, is that there's really three kinds of drops. And there's the focus drop, there's the drop that results due to bad tracking of the football, and then also a technique-oriented drop where you're just not using the correct hand position to the height of the target or the location of the target. And the focus drop is the easiest one to correct, and that's most of the drops that Hakeem Butler had. And while my buddy Matt Harmon over at Yahoo Sports will, I saw him on Twitter say basically, well, a drop is a drop is a drop according to what happens on the field in terms of how you log it as a statistic. He's correct about that. But when you contextualize what happens on the field with a drop, you have to understand that it's kind of like this. I'm sure you've just helped your daughter learn to drive in recent years. So there are certain types of errors that you can make when you're driving. And it's like, there's some where you look at it and go, you know what, that was just a focus thing where turn the radio off, stop looking at me while you're talking, keep your eyes in the parking lot and go 5 miles an hour while that's going on, and having to relearn what's going on. But then there are other things where when that happens, you're basically at the point where you say, pull the car over and let's stop, and I'm going to drive us back to where we need to go so we don't get killed. And when it comes to catching the ball with quarterbacks, I mean, if you have a focus drop, that's not a big deal because they still trust you enough to know that they can throw the ball on a variety of different routes and locations, and you're going to catch the ball. Just occasionally you'll have a drop because you're too eager to secure the ball and turn upfield. But if you're like Sammy Coates, who can't track the ball over his head while he's running with his back to the quarterback, then you know that it's really not going to make a lot of sense to throw post routes and go routes to him or different types of routes vertical downfield. And that's really where he gets open because he's so fast. So that becomes problematic. You don't know whether you can trust him or not to actually find the football. And then the same thing goes with hands positions, where if you don't use the correct hands position, then that receiver is going to need a lot of work to make sure that he can react the right way. And Hakeem Butler doesn't have those issues. His main issue is just, again, securing the football before he turns upfield, as opposed to looking forward to running over 2 to 3 people or running around them and taking it 50 to 60 yards, because he knows how dominant of an athlete he is. So he's probably excited about the fact that he only has a safety or two that he has to beat as he catches that ball and sees it upfield. And that's just a maturity thing, and he'll get over that. I think he's a fine player. I think he earned the highest grade I've ever given over the past few years with the new scoring system I use to evaluate players. He has the highest grade thus far, So I think he's going to be an excellent prospect. And the fact that he dropped to the 4th round may be a concern to some, but really 4th round receivers tend to be players with first day and second day grades that other teams didn't pick because they either didn't need a receiver or they picked someone else they also liked that was a better match for what they do, and that guy happened to fall.
The thing I liked about him, Matt, and I've picked it, he was my number one on my board, my wide receiver board, because when I was looking at guys this year, you have the outside guys, and that's what they are. You can almost put so many guys into just fixed categories this year, and he was one guy that you can put anywhere on the field, and he can do the whole lot. Out wide, you can run him, in the slot, and they were, few and far between, I found, in the wide receivers this year. But as far as the hands go, Matt, I agree with what you were saying about the concentration shot. But there were some, Matt, where it's just, oh my God, that the hands are just really bad. Like instead of the fingers pointing towards the heavens, the proper hand position, thumbs together. Some of them is like the fingers are pointing towards the quarterback from where the ball's coming from. It's almost like he's trying to grab it out too quickly, like reach and grab it and bring it in so I can go. And maybe that's what you're talking about, having it spent before you've earned it, sort of type thing.
Yep, that's exactly. He's just overeager. Yeah, and I think that's correctable. It's not like Quincy Enunwa, who had to work really hard on his hands, and I've joked around that when he went up for a pass in Nebraska, sometimes it looked like he was doing an interpretive dance move. And you're looking and going, why are you crossing your forearms and then like turning your wrist the way that you are? I mean, are you trying to imitate a butterfly? You know, is there like, are you getting extra credit in like your improvisational modern dance elective and you're at Nebraska? Is that why you're doing this? Because it's not really working for you. And it took him a while to get over that. But I think with Butler, I agree with you, and it's a great point about the fact that he can't play all three positions, and he's probably going to have to do that at Arizona because it seems like everyone they drafted and in the past 2 years or have on that team is essentially a slot receiver other than Butler who happens to be able to play. So I'm kind of laughing because it's like, okay, Cliff Kingsbury, you basically drafted two guys who can play in the slot, and you already have a slot receiver, Christian Kirk, and Larry Fitzgerald has been relegated to the slot because he's not quick enough. You've got like four guys in a phone booth right now, and you don't need that.
Yeah, no, exactly right. It's like how many people could we fit in the phone booth and take the photo and see if we can get in the Guinness Book of Records. It's a bit like that at the Cards at the moment. But okay, so we're middle rounds, Matt. Who's the guy you're looking at the middle rounds of your draft?
I think for me at this stage, probably the middle round guy. I think I'd probably take my chances with Jalen Hurd or Deontay Johnson. And which one do you want me to talk about?
Jalen Hurd, please.
Which one of those two?
I'm a fan of Jalen Hurd.
Jalen Hurd, okay. So that's that, and that probably should be the guy that I would take because Deontay Johnson's really still more of an early round guy now, moved up. So, look, Jalen Hurd is a former 5-star running back at Tennessee, and I remember grading him. And as a running back, the same year that Derrick Henry was a draft pick and James Conner was a draft pick, and Jalen Hurd to me at that time was this big runner with kind of slow, awkward footing, who had some burst and power, but his feet just got in the way. Like he tried to set up cuts and it just looked like that he was running on water skis. It just didn't really, it just didn't work out for him where he'd trip up over himself or just couldn't make the cuts. But he could catch the ball really well. And then I found out that, he was kind of playing hurt and he didn't want to be a running back. He wanted to be a receiver. And the University of Tennessee has had some issues over the years with their coaching staff and their football program where the players and coaches haven't gotten along. There have been some weird incidents in terms of questions about leadership with the coaching staff. And Hurd was at the center of some of that because of the fact that he wanted to play a different position. And they had John Kelly and Alvin Kamara behind him. And they still wanted to keep him as the running back rather than let him play wide receiver. And this is a big, tall guy. Yeah. So he ended up playing through some things, got hurt, decided to leave the team. They badmouthed him. He wound up at Baylor. He got a lot of bad press about that here in the States. And he ended up converting his game to wide receiver. So fast forward to, this past year, and I'm watching him play, and really even last year, or really this year, watching him play, and he looks like a completely different player. He looks like he's been playing wide receiver for 4 years. He knows how to drop his weight well to come into these hard breaks and make that drive step where you can come to a sudden stop and then break back to the quarterback. He's quick off the line. His footwork was fantastic. And I was really pleasantly surprised at how good his footwork was compared to what I saw with this guy, with the big water skis running around and the foot flapping around in a way that it looked like he was going to trip over himself all the time. And he caught the ball pretty well. He had some drops, but he was someone that used good technique. He could get open deep. He had a good enough speed and good enough burst. And of course he could run after the catch. Oof. But what was interesting to me was all the footwork drills he did as a receiver made him an actual better running back. And they put him back in the game. They often put him in the game as a running back and used him in situations. And he looked much sharper setting up cuts. And all that route running work he did made him a better running back. So now here he is in San Francisco, and they have an outside receiver who's going to probably play the split end and Deebo Samuel. They're probably going to have Dante Pettis alternate between flanker and the slot. And they already have guys like Richie James and Trent Taylor who can be a small slot receiver. But Jalen Hurd, he can probably be a flanker. He could develop into a split end. He could definitely play the slot because that's where he played at Baylor. But if you need him at running back, you could probably use him as a big back in short yardage. And then they've talked about him possibly being a tight end or an H-back. So if they want to use 2 tight ends with George Kittle, now you can use Jalen Hurd and still get kind of the big plays that George Kittle gives. But if you need Kittle to block, now Jalen Hurd's the guy that can do that. So he's kind of an intriguing player who oftentimes when you hear they're a player without a position, that's a bad thing for fantasy football. But this might be a good one. This might be more of like a Aaron Hernandez, when Aaron Hernandez was at the top of his game with New England and could play running back and wide receiver and fullback and tight end and do all of those different things for you. And Hurd might have a chance to be able to be that kind of player.
I found the thing I liked about it that when I looked at Hurd and Butler, I don't know if you see. I sometimes saw the same player, Matt, but Butler could go up and get the ball, but Hurd could go up and the times you see him go up at high point and contested catches, mate, he looked so natural. But they didn't use him in that role a lot, but he can do it, and I just sort of see a bit of the same sort of guy between the two. And the one thing he does have, Matt, once the first foot that hits the ground after the catch, he's a different player. He's a running back.
Yeah.
And that's what, mate, like you got a guy that can catch the ball and do these routes and do all this as a wide receiver. And the minute he's got the ball, he's a different position.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just second nature to him.
Yep.
So, and there are a couple of players in this draft who've played running back who are wide receivers now, but I think he's the best of that bunch, and I think he could be an NFL running back if he wanted to be and they wanted him to do it. He'd be a little bit on the larger side and a little upright, but I think he could probably gain the 15, 20 pounds and do that if they needed it. But I'd like to see him as a receiver. I'd like them to continue to go that route and see how that works for him.
Excellent. Okay, Matt, late rounds. Who are you grabbing?
Probably at this point, the guy that I'm probably looking at here is Reggie White Jr., the wide receiver who was undrafted by the New York Giants, who was signed to a contract with them. I know his agent. And I don't normally deal with agents, but this guy is actually does just kind of small deals with smaller school players, and he's not in the realm of trying to influence writers and analysts about where this guy is. But he shared with me that the Giants went out to scout him specifically, and that a 30-year veteran of the scouting was there, made a special trip to see him, and said that Reggie White was the best player to ever come out of that school that he came from, and that included Chris Hogan and Miles Austin as receivers who were alumni of that. And Reggie White reminds me of one of my favorite receivers, Marvin Jones. He's built like Marvin Jones. He's got the quickness and leaping ability to win the ball like Marvin Jones. He's someone that also runs pretty good routes and looks like he has the ability to become a masterful route runner. And even though he did it at a small school, you could see the types of techniques that you're looking for out of him. And they're missing Odell Beckham Jr. this year with him being traded to the Cleveland Browns. So I like hearing that old Odell Beckham traded to the Cleveland Browns. I could say that a number of times. But they need a player. They need a player to replace Odell Beckham. And they're not going to be able to replace the kind of production or skill that Beckham brings. But certainly Marvin Jones is an Odell Beckham-like player in terms of style. Very good route runner, good at the catch point, skilled after the catch. And I think Reggie White can develop into an aspiring Marvin Jones. So I would take my chances with him.
Nice.
Now, Matt, one guy before we move on to the tight ends, I just want to ask you about someone. He went undrafted and he signed with the Miami Dolphins. I had this guy in my top 5, and mate, you can call bullshit on this if you want, Matt. It's more than happy to do that. But that's Preston Williams. Now, we know why he dropped. His off-field issues. But if you just go and look from my point of view, you go look at the tape, and this guy, he has everything you want. Like last year with 96 catches, 1,345 yards, 14 TDs on a team that had the offensive line was terrible. The quarterback was below average at best, and he still put up these numbers. And look, at 6'4", 209 pounds, mate, the guy is just. You look at his highlight. I look at more than his highlight reel, but for those who want to go and have a look, just look at his highlight reel. It's incredible.
Oh yeah. I'm a big fan of Williams, and he would have been a guy that I would have absolutely considered. He was number 7 on my board, so he was, we were in the same range in terms of how much we liked him. And he is. I've joked that if you were picking players in terms of their style of play, and it's kind of like if you were renting a car and you wanted to rent a a compact car or a subcompact car or a utility vehicle or a sports car or a large luxury car, you have different models or makes of types of cars you'd get. If wide receivers were like that, Preston Williams to me would be kind of like the starter version of AJ Green. AJ Green would be the all-pro version of that receiver. Preston Williams would be kind of like the starter version of that, meaning that I think he can come in and develop into a starting receiver in the NFL and play at a strong level as a split end or a flanker because of all the things that you described he can do. My biggest concern about Preston Williams is that because he got into some trouble, and because of the nature of that trouble, and as someone who lived in Miami, Florida, and went to school in Miami, Florida, every city has places where you can get into trouble if you're an immature young man. That's just a fact of life. If you want to go looking for trouble, you can find it. But the thing is that in Miami, it's really in your face. It's a very big temptation that's available there for that to happen. And I'm just kind of wary about after maybe he's successful right away and the city welcomes him with open arms. So they do. Does that mean that he's going to kind of, have a lapse in maturity? Is he going to be someone that gets too caught up in the nightlife of Miami in a way that would be easy for anyone in their early to mid-20s with a lot of newfound money and fame? Would that, that's a big temptation for anyone. And so I'm curious to see how he's going to go, because I'm pretty optimistic about him being successful on the field if he's committing himself to playing. What I'm worried about is what happens after that success and how long it will take for him to overcome those temptations, if not succumb to them.
That's a really good point you make, mate, because he was undrafted, and from what I read, he had like 9 or 10 teams straight onto him straight away, bang, and he went and picked Miami.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's like, now when you say that, thinking that's a really good point. And you know more about, like, we see Miami and Sonny Crockett and Ricardo Tubbs and how pretty cool it looks to live in Miami. Showing my age there. But, that's a really good point you make, Matt. But, mate, you look at him coming out of high school. Mate, he fielded offers from Florida State, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson. Mate, he was he was sought after. He was like a 5-star kid out of Lovejoy High.
Yeah, he was. And certainly he was. And so and you could see his play in that regard. So, I mean, he's definitely has the skills. And, the teammates say that he's matured. And I read into the police report of what happened.
Yep.
And certainly what he did was wrong.
Yep.
And certainly what he could have done, what that could have meant in terms of how it could have escalated further, it could have become a more serious situation. Even though it didn't, it's not comparable. You could say you wouldn't compare it to what Tyreek Hill has done, or Dede Westbrook has done by any stretch of the imagination. But it was still wrong. It was immature, and it was something that he needed to learn from. And hopefully he has, and hopefully it isn't a signifier of deeper issues that we don't know about. And I'd rather not say that it is, because I think that we don't want to criminalize behavior with people that we haven't seen anything from. Yep. So I just think he's an immature. I think if anything, he was an immature kid who needed to learn how to handle himself better so that he didn't escalate situations worse. And hopefully he doesn't wind up in when he picked Miami, hopefully he did it because of Josh Rosen, and that Devontae Parker has not been a strong talent in terms of making the best of his ability. And maybe Williams saw that opportunity and said, wow, I kind of have a straight shot to being able to start here. Yeah. And I think he probably did look at that, and he probably got agent advice there. But I agree with you about the Miami thing, because as someone who used to play music in the Miami area when I was growing up, it's a fun town, and you can have too much fun too fast.
So if he rocks up to first day of training in a black convertible Ferrari Daytona, like Sonny Crockett used to drive, we're in trouble. And gets a croc and starts living on a boat, we're in deep trouble with him. All right, Matt, let's move on to the tight ends, mate. Who you picking at the top of your tight end rankings?
Oh, T.J. Hawkinson with Detroit, and it is closer than I would say, between he and Irv Smith. But T.J. Hawkinson is such a good player. He's going to get on the field right away because of his blocking ability. You know what? I'm going to change my mind about that, hopefully. I'm actually going to say Irv Smith. And because as much as I like T.J. Hawkinson, his blocking ability, his pass-catching ability, and I like him long-term, and he's my number one guy overall, I wouldn't be surprised if Irv Smith actually ends up having the most production this year. He's the best player after the catch as a receiver of all the tight ends in this class, even though he's not as athletic as Hawkinson or Noah Fant. But he's a really good route runner. He's a good pass catcher, and he just runs with a really good balance. He's just so polished. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to trade Kyle Rudolph, or they just decide, you know what, we're tired of you not being able to block very well, Kyle. We're going to put Irv Smith in here. He's been polished and played well. We're going to give him a shot. And I think that he could end up being, highly productive. He reminds me of Delaney Walker. And I think that that's something that I just wouldn't be surprised at all if he's the most productive tight end this year, even though if I were looking long-term, Hawkinson would be my guy.
I agree, like especially with his blocking, Matt. I was really he was out of his with his hand on the ground as a block, mate. He is in position that quickly, he's so explosive as a blocker. Whoever he's blocking the defensive end, or mate, the guy hasn't even moved and he's already in his stance. I just found it so impressive how quick he was. I thought his hands were really good, Matt. Not only in blocking, but they also, when you see him go down the field and he's contesting with a linebacker, just how good his hand usage was, just to slap the guy away, basically. And the one thing I did like, Matt, is he can run full speed, and then he'll start doing I saw it a few times, he'll start doing little stutter steps, and the linebacker goes, what the hell are you doing? And he'll either accelerate straight, in a straight line again. But by that time, the linebacker's stopped any momentum that he had, because he doesn't know if he's going to go left, right. And it's just constantly put the linebacker in. I have no idea where this guy's going. I might just be seeing things. I had to get glasses for the first time in the last 2 weeks, Matt. So, I've made it to 50 without them. So I think I've done a pretty good job. So maybe I was just...
Hey. That's excellent.
But that's just something I saw, Matt.
My playing in the dark in Miami, playing gigs in the dark in Miami, caused my eyes to go pretty quickly.
Yeah, that does. And my hearing, rock concerts, god damn them. Okay, Matt, so middle rounds. Who are you looking at for a tight end?
Man, there are a number of good tight ends for this, but I think I'm going to have to take Foster Moreau with Oakland. He's, Dawson Knox is interesting. Kahale Warring with Houston's interesting.
I was hoping you bring him up, Matt, but there we go.
Yeah, I like those guys. Josh Oliver is interesting, but Moreau's polished. He's a good blocker. He's going to get on the field right away, and he does catch the ball well. He's very fluid, and he plays with an edge. He's the type of player that's probably going to get into some fights. He's a player who's probably going to get into some fights, and a little bit when just trying to be a little too physical for too long. But he plays in a way that's going to endear himself to teammates. I think he's going to be able to get open in the short and intermediate ranges of the field. And the West Coast offense likes to use the tight end, and they don't really have anybody with Moreau's type of ability. So I think in the next cup, by the end of this year, he'll be the every down starter, if not earlier. So I like him a lot.
Interesting.
Matt spoke about,
Waring.
Yeah, I was.
Well, you can ask him.
I'll ask him. I'll ask him at the end. Matt, who are you taking? Who are you taking down the bottom? Who's the flyer?
I already mentioned him. It's Trevon Wesco. He's not even. I do this. I give this cheat sheet out in the rookie scouting portfolio, and I do this whole value calculation between my rankings and ADP, and basically, if he's, if I have him rated, 15 to 20 picks above where he's going, then he's underrated by 15. And that's kind of how it's listed. If he's overrated by, where people are picking them 14 picks ahead of where I'm rating him, then he's over by 14. Trevon Wesco, I have him rated in the mid rounds and no one's picking him. So, I couldn't even calculate a number how much he was underrated. So I would definitely be taking a chance on him for the reasons we talked about early in the show.
Very good. Can we talk about Kyle Waring? Is that all right, Matt? Have you got a little bit of time? Because what was water polo player? That's correct, isn't it? Wasn't that one of the?
He played a lot of sports.
He did,
yeah.
A goalie.
Yeah, mate. Like, if you ever watch water, I don't, mate. Seriously,
that's a physical sport.
That is a game I have. That's one. That'd be down the bottom of the list because that man looks seriously way too hard, way too hard. Plus, I like my boys being protected, and down there it doesn't seem like I get a lot of protection, does it? There's knees going, feet, hands.
I'm sure that happens.
Yes, I'm sure it does. But can we speak about him, Matt? Because I saw it, mate. I had him down as play speed. I saw him as the quickest tight end. Like everybody talks about Noah Fant, and I have problems about Noah Fant and the way he gets into his cuts and stuff like that. I think he gives it away far too often. And I didn't think his downfield speed was any quicker than TJ Hockenson, to be honest, on tape. But I watched Waring, and it's just like, man, this dude gets downfield quick. And there's one, again, I think it's against Boise State. I think it's about the second play you see. He doesn't get the ball, and he's down, I think he's down in the bottom of the screen, and he puts this double move on that wide receivers go, damn, I wish I could do that. A guy's a lot smaller.
Yeah, and when you look at Waring, I think the big thing about Waring is that he has upside to grow. But the things that he does well are things that you need an NFL player to do well. I think he runs good routes. He can catch the ball well. I think he has the strength to be a good blocker and the size to become a good blocker. He just has to refine some techniques, both as a receiver and as a blocker. But he can make the tough catches already. He can run after the catch. He's a guy that, all in all, you got to like him. And then plus, as you alluded to, he's probably a eunuch at this point, so he's probably not going to get hurt all that often.
That's a good point.
Polo, he's like, all that water polo, he gets kicked here and there, whatever, that, or he's like the guys that I joked around with on Twitter. Last year before the Browns got good, I took a video showing all of these men who were training some form of like martial art, where they were literally hitting themselves. They were hitting themselves in the groin, and using like rocks and using their fists and like having like something like rock and catapult into them. And I was joking that these were Browns fans getting ready for the 2018 NFL draft. And, and it was probably the most popular tweet I've ever sent out. But I'm starting to think that maybe Kahale Waring was coming from this martial arts school. So we'll see. But he's a good player. And I think that the only concern I have is that they picked a good player in Jordan Akins and in Jordan Thomas. And they already have and then they have Griffin. So Griffin will probably be gone by the end of the year. But Akins and Thomas are also promising guys. So, and also Houston hasn't been very good at being able to use the tight end all that much. So I'm wondering if he's going to get wasted there, and if he's just going to be part of a committee. And I kind of wonder if Rick Smith, the GM, hasn't realized that Gary Kubiak and his West Coast offense left like 3 years ago. So, trying to actually, maybe he's still drafting tight ends thinking that Gary Kubiak is his coach. I don't really know, but it's interesting that Holly Warren is, he definitely has the upside we're looking for a fantasy player.
Yeah, and one thing I really liked about him, Matt, is the amount of work that he's not getting the ball. The amount of times that he moves downfield and punches holes for, screen passes and stuff like that, how he gets out in front, and he won't block one guy, he'll push one guy out of the way and then push another guy out of the way. He does a lot of the unseen work as well. And with the other backs that they have there in the Jordans, but they're not that quick enough to be able to get downfield and do that for the Texans, where this guy has the speed to get out in front of people. So I'm hoping that things like that will, get him into the playing time. Like he needs to work on blocking, obviously, because this is all new to him, basically. But then, pass blocking, I have no idea, Matt, because it wasn't part of what they asked him to do. Every time there was a pass play, he's gone. So I have no idea how he pass blocks. So I don't think that he wasn't asked to do that.
Yeah, and I don't think they're gonna want him to pass block all that much in that offense either. So yeah, I agree.
Matt, just to round out, and I look forward to.
This better be a good question.
Immediately after this,
I want to ask one more, but I've been greedy. Sorry, mate.
Okay, no, it's all right. I was going to say I look forward to immediately after this downloading the post-draft RSP, and one of the things that I think was kind of a universal emotion over the 3 days of the draft was, we had all these names in our head, and then we saw landing spots. We saw guys kind of drop, and then we saw landing spots. We go, oh dear. Like you just sort of sigh, like. And so when doing the post-draft RSP, I'm really curious to see how you've kind of laid it out, because there's a lot of there's a few plum landing spots, but then there's a lot of really, really ordinary ones.
Oh, yeah. There are absolutely a lot of ordinary ones. And there were some ones that were just disappointing. With the wide receiver position, as I've talked about a lot, there's a lot of variation when it comes to how the teams evaluate these players and at these positions. And it's because they play essentially 3 different positions on the field, and there's different little sub-roles with that. So as a result, there's some players who really fall. And Stanley Morgan Jr. is a player I really liked, who's with Cincinnati, but was undrafted. So I'm a little worried about how his overall looks going to be. Then you have a guy like Emmanuel Butler and little Jordan Humphrey, 2 receivers I liked, who the New Orleans Saints took, but kind of like the 5 men in the phone booth in Arizona. Now you've got Mike Thomas, who's basically, the slot receiver who can play a little bit outside. And he's looking at Emmanuel Butler and the little Jordan Humphrey are walking towards that phone booth, and he's saying, the phone's in use right now. You guys need to wait.
I just love the name,
go somewhere else.
Little. He had to be drafted just Little. Like, did his parents listen to rap, you reckon? Well, rap. What do they call it? I'm way behind. They don't call it rap anymore, do they, Matt?
Really?
I don't know.
Don't they?
I don't know what they call it these days. Gangster music, I have no idea.
Hip-hop.
Hip-hop, there we go. Yeah. Like Little. Like what?
Lil.
What are you doing naming your kid? But he had to be drafted just based on that. So I'm glad he went somewhere.
See, that's right.
Yeah, out of everybody.
It could be a family thing.
Listen,
it could be a family thing, because I got to tell you, country folks in America, they sometimes give their kids nicknames that they call around the family, but not their actual name.
Yep.
My wife is from the country, and her family called her Mickey. So when I first came to meet the family, and there's all this family around, and I was looking for her, and I called out Alicia, nobody knew who I was talking about.
Why do people do that, Matt? Why do people do that? Why do people give their kids names and then never call them that name for the rest of their life?
I'll tell you why. Because it's usually a grandparent who didn't like the name that their daughter or son gave the kid, and they decided, forget it. We're just calling him this, and I'm the matriarch of the family. So whatever, you know. So it may be on the birth certificate, but everybody knows him as something else. So if you got one of those like dominating matriarch or patriarchs in the family, then they end up giving you the alternate nickname. So maybe they had like two Jordans, and one was little and one was big, and maybe they call him Little, and they're just stuck.
Mate, I'm looking forward to
it's crazy, but it's true.
I'm looking forward to the first player that runs out with his like this is an American. We don't do it over here. Rarely that we name our sons or daughters after the
junior.
mother of junior. It's not an Australian trait. Which over there, I can't wait to see like a kid come out in maybe another 20, 30, 40 years with an X on the back or a V. We've got the third. But we haven't gone to 4 yet, and we haven't got a V. I'm just looking forward to when those are on the back of the jersey. But
boxer George Foreman did that, right? Didn't he name all his kids George? And he had
really,
and they, yeah. George Foreman had like 5. I think he has like 5 boys, and they're all named George. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I find that's weird to me, but anyway. All right, Matt, before we let you go, mate.
Me too, but are you going to fight him?
No, hell no. He'd be even more pissed off because I didn't buy his bloody grill either, so... before we go, Matt, because you've been so generous with your time as always, and mate, seriously, I've got 110. I should get AJ to take a photo. I've got like 110 pieces of paper in front of me, and I could talk about all these guys with you, Matt. But before we go, hold on, let me spread it out a bit more. You can't see them when they're all bunched up like that, mate. Okay, one guy that you had highly rated pre-draft, and who was probably the worst landing spot, who dropped in the post-draft RSP for you, Matt?
Ooh, well, Stanley Morgan certainly was one of those players. Yeah. And then I would say another one who had a pretty bad landing spot that dropped for me. Let's look at a different position here. Ronnie Anderson, the running back for Cincinnati. Cincinnati seems to be a bad place for all of this, but Ronnie Anderson was a really good player who just, I hope that he would land somewhere that he'd have a clear shot to compete with the starter next year. But with Joe Mixon and Giovanni Bernard, and then you add Travion Williams, who I'm not particularly that enthused about, but still with Joe Mixon in that lineup, I wonder whether Ronnie Anderson will get a chance to really show the talent that he has in Cincinnati, unless Mixon has an injury.
I agree, man. Like when I did my running back, I tried not to look at the injuries, and I just looked at the player for what he was. And let's face it, Rodney Anderson, he'd never finished a year at college without being on the injury report or lost half. Well, geez, last year he only played half a game was it or something before he did his ACL. So at least he did it at the start of the year.
Yeah.
But I had him, and you can call bullshit on this one too, Matt. I had him at number 2, just on his skill set as a running back. I think if you take all the injuries out of it, mate, he would have been ahead of Josh Jacobs, in my opinion. I think he does everything Josh Jacobs should do. Probably Josh Jacobs is a little bit shiftier, but power and what he can do for a guy his size, I had him as my number 2. And to fall behind, and I'm with you with Travion Williams. I think he's okay. I don't see the hype about him, but they took him before they took Rodney Anderson. Maybe that's based on the fact that he's never finished a year without being injured. But yeah, that's how I saw it, Matt. So give us, before we go, the guy who rides the most post-draft.
Probably Mecole Hardman with Kansas City, mainly because he's a player who fits what Kansas City wants to do. With Tyreek Hill likely gone, they need a receiver who has the speed to earn yards after the catch and be able to work around angles and avoid angles of pursuit and be, a dynamic runner. Hardman can do that. He's an All-American punt returner, and he's a former quarterback who plays like a guy who probably ran a lot of option football. They need a receiver who can win downfield and win in the vertical game with his speed and catch the ball on the move and back it well. And Hardman does that well. He's also someone that can go up and win some, back shoulder fades and make adjustments to the ball and against tight coverage. He's not someone that's going to do the dynamic work where he's going to pull the ball away from a defender or work over the back of the defender and win the ball or make physical catches where he has to adjust in that kind of fashion. But he is someone who, if the ball's placed where it needs to be and he's able to turn in time, he can make those tight coverage plays. So you get a player who does a lot of what Tyreek Hill does. He just doesn't do it as well. He doesn't do it at a top level. But I think that he can still force opponents to play a little deeper, force that safety to account for him. He can still do things in the option game as a runner that will make him dynamic and will help this offense. And it means that if he's not, he's not going to come in and be the number one receiver in football the way Tyreek Hill was last year. But he could come in and be a top 36 receiver, be a wide receiver 3 for fantasy players, and that could be enough for that offense to still thrive. And as long as Sammy Watkins can stay healthy, and maybe they can find additional help from a guy like Byron Pringle from Kansas State, who's a second-year receiver, as well as, of course, Travis Kelce and what they might get out of Darwin Thompson and some of the running backs here. So Mecole Hardman was a guy that I probably would have taken late in the draft, late in a rookie draft, if he went to a different team. Like if he was in Cleveland or if he was in Miami, I probably would have considered him as like a 4th or 5th round pick. Now I have him as an early 2nd round pick.
Okay. Just one more, and AJ's giving me a dirty look because we're going to let Matt go. But his teammate, who I'm a fan of, and that's Riley Ridley. How did you see Riley Ridley, Matt? Just so I know where I stand on.
Yeah, I think he's a good player. I think he's definitely a good possession receiver who runs excellent routes. And I think he displays a little bit more than in the possession game. He's someone that if you project what he could do based on what you see in just individual elements of going up to win the ball, things like that, I think he can be an NFL starter in the league at some point. But at where he landed, I don't love the landing spot. I think that in Chicago, he may develop and he may get a shot maybe at one point, but he's not quite dynamic the way that Allen Robinson is. You have Anthony Miller, who's a very good slot receiver who can play flanker. So where is he going to wind up? Is he going to end up being a slot receiver? Is he going to end up being a flanker? I don't think he's really an ideal split end. He kind of reminds me of Robert Woods, and that's a good thing. Robert Woods I liked out of school, but it might take him going to another team for him to really hit his stride and become the player that he's capable of. So right now I have him as a, kind of like a 4th or 5th round player in terms of where I would wait to take him, but you're going to have to get him probably in the 3rd or early 4th round at best.
Okay.
And so he's a good player, just not a great player.
Yeah.
I'm calling bullshit on Matt. I think the lack of tape probably didn't help him either too. Just the amount of catches that he had the whole time. Like he improved every year because his catches went up, obviously. But I just see a guy that's he's not his brother. I've always said this, Matt. He's not that sharp edge like his brother. He's more of a sort of like a smooth, sort of gliding sort of guy. And I was just really impressed, Matt, by how many times he found himself like wide open. Like there's no one around him. And there's obviously someone covering him. They're not just letting him run free. I find that a really good trait. I reckon some of his body adjustment too on catches behind him. He does have some very good body control.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he certainly can. He's a fine route runner, and that's gonna give him a long career in the league. I just don't know whether he has the upside. He's going to have to be on a team kind of like Robert Woods was. He's going to have to be in a team that isn't just enamored with big-bodied guys who are extremely fast and think that somehow that's better than having a complete skill level as a route runner. And I think if he finds a team that appreciates his skills, he could be an 80, 90 catch receiver in the league. But I don't think Chicago is going to wind up being that place. And I'm still kind of waiting to see if Mitchell Trubisky turns the corner, because watching him against Miami, it was pretty clear in that Miami game in overtime that that the head coach looked at that and said, wow, okay, we need to calm this kid down, and we're going to need to kind of take a different approach, because this is Trubisky's a guy since his college days. He's the type of guy that when things go wrong, he makes them worse. He makes the situation worse, and he tends to panic in terms of his decision making. He doesn't make good decisions under pressure. So I don't know if that's a trait he's ever going to fix.
All right. Well,
AJ's giving me the slit across the throat. Let's just cut this. Matt's been on enough, and you keep asking questions, Greg. It's hard. We only speak to Matt once a year. Maybe we've got to get you back more often, Matt, so we can...
Matt is
If you want to give me a couple more, you're good. I'm okay with it. It's up to you.
No, it's all right. We'll wrap it up. But,
and you got to get up. You got to get up to the. You got to get into the kitchen, mate, because your wife might be in there. She might be getting your dinner ready, and you don't want that happening.
That's true. I haven't heard any fire alarms yet.
Beautiful.
So.
Now, I probably don't need to tell people where to find you, Matt. I'm sure everybody knows. But on Twitter, they can find you at Matt Waldman. And, of course, mattwaldmanrsp.com, where they can now get, if they haven't yet purchased the RSP, they can get the bonus of getting the post-draft edition and the pre-draft edition. And, I mean, especially with this particular class, I think the pre-draft edition is invaluable, because a lot of these guys are in really sort of, as we were saying, they're all over the joint in terms of landing spot.
Well, it's all joy, it's all sunshine, rainbows, daisy fields, isn't it? Because we haven't had the draft yet, and then you go and look at Matt's post-draft and see where he ranks people, and it's all going to be tears and overcast skies and for a lot of guys that we like.
But also, in the actual NFL draft broadcast, it's always sunshines and rainbows.
I can't believe. I'm not gonna say who I was looking at the post draft grades.
Yeah,
but I have, mate. If I had that many A's, mate, I'd be a nuclear scientist. Seriously, there was that many A's given out. I have not everybody. I reckon there was at least 15 A's.
Right.
I'm thinking, really?
There was. Basically, you're saying that there was candy shooting out of unicorns behind.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Precisely.
Geez, we got to do Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory again and put one of those unicorns in there, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
We do.
Maybe not use Johnny Depp. He was a bit weird.
Yeah, that's right.
I was going to, let's not. Please, we need Gene Wilder back.
Yes.
Yes. Johnny Depp was imitating Michael Jackson, and that was not a good thing.
No. So, hey, that's a good comp. That is when you think about it now, it never dawned on me, but now you say that.
It never dawned on you?
No.
It was the very first thing that dawned on me.
Really?
It was super creepy. Yeah.
Oh, it was creepy, but I never put those two people together, but now you mention it, Matt, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's totally what it was. I mean, great musician, but his life was creepy.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. But, I mean, I was going to say it's kind of, these things were kind of dodgy, but then I realized that that's kind of like what English people say. And it's one of the things that when I think about that, I think that's what we have in common is that we kind of look at the English askew. So
yes,
we do. Yeah.
We look at them we look at them quite strangely. They don't anybody. I've always said there's a lot of animosity between the two countries, between us and them, but us being a colony. Well, America's a colony as well, but we're probably closer ties because we're still in the Commonwealth. But I think they're still dirty because they send all the crap over here, all the convicts and that, and to this glorious country that we live, and it is a beautiful country that we live in.
We've got sand on our beach.
We've actually got sand and pebbles and rocks, and they're all stuck over there in that miserable goddamn weather. Pasty-faced people that they are. That's why they're dirty.
They sent all their criminals over to a paradise, and then they realised, oh, hang on, maybe we've done this the wrong way.
200 years later, we've realised we made a mistake.
Yeah, and then they did the same thing with us. They said the same thing here. They send a bunch of criminals here, and then they were like, well, now let's see if we can tax the hell out of them too. So then, that was kind of fun. And then the French saved us. and then we, kind of helped save us, and then we turned our back on them too, and make fun of them. So I don't know, we're a weird country. But
you are a weird country, Matt. Sorry to say.
I like the fact that we have the English in common as people we look at and go, yeah, that's like, yeah, Dad was kind of uncool here, So yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, because I was raised by one Matt, so my old man's one. So I do look at him that way. He goes, "Why you look at me strange?" I said, "Dad, that's okay, Dad. I can explain."
I think maybe what we could say is that Americans and Australians are English people with social skills.
That is good.
They have social skills, of course, but they have a rule book for everything.
Yeah,
so
they do.
Obviously, they don't have social intelligence that they have to have a rule book like this. So now I know that English people are going to hate me when I do come to, if any of them are listening, to this. But they probably aren't, because they,
we got Aussie guys, so I'm not listening to that.
Yeah.
No, we're safe. We're safe. So next time I see my dad, I say, "You got no social skills," because Matt Waldman told me. So we'll see how he goes.
That's right.
Well, I'll know which one is your dad when I take a punch to the eye. So there we go.
When you see +61 come up on your phone, don't answer it, Matt.
All right. On that note, we'll wrap up.
Noted.
And
duly noted. Yes.
Yes. We'll let you enjoy your Saturday evening, and we'll head out to our Sunday afternoon.
Good night.
Good night.